Hello, and welcome back to Haunted Slumber. Before we begin, take a moment to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. I always enjoy reading them. Tonight, settle in for 2 hours of slow, eerie horror stories, softly narrated to help you relax, quiet your mind, and slowly drift towards sleep. There will be only 2 or 3 ads during the first 10 minutes. After that, the rest of the journey will be completely uninterrupted. If you enjoy peaceful, atmospheric horror made for late-night listening, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another haunting story. Now, get comfortable, let your body grow still, and allow the sounds of the outside world to fade quietly into the distance. The night is settling in, your thoughts are becoming quieter, and somewhere beyond the silence, a forgotten story is beginning to unfold. So close your eyes, take a slow breath, listen carefully, and let the darkness carry you gently into haunted slumber. Let's begin. Story 1, Madam President. It's been initiated. I heard my own voice shake as I said it. She did not turn around. The president stood in front of the enormous, reinforced window at the far end of the command room, her hands resting loosely at her sides. Beyond the glass, the city was burning. Explosions flashed across the skyline in silent bursts of orange and white. For a second at a time, each one outlined her body against the darkness. The lights made her look almost unreal, like a shadow painted onto the window. Nobody else in the room spoke. There were more than 20 of us inside the underground command center. Military officers, intelligence chiefs, communications staff, Secret Service, cabinet members who had been able to reach the bunker in time. Every monitor showed some version of the same thing. Missile launches, destroyed cities, black screens, emergency broadcasts, maps covered in red. Entire parts of the world had disappeared from our communication network in less than 20 minutes. I stood several feet behind her with the emergency transcript open on my tablet. This was it. Everyone in the room understood. Whatever she said next would become the final historic statement of the United States, assuming there was anyone left alive to record history afterward. I waited. The president remained silent for several seconds. Then she slowly shook her head. "Well," she said. Another explosion flashed outside. Shit, nobody laughed. I almost did. Not because it was funny, because it was so completely her. For the past 3 years, journalists had built whole careers analyzing every word she said. Some called her brilliant, others called her reckless. Some said she was the most gifted politician of her generation. Whatever people thought of her, nobody could deny one thing. When she spoke, people listened. That was why I had joined her campaign. That was why millions followed her. And now, with civilization collapsing outside, her first response was simply, "Well, shit." She finally turned from the window. "What do we have?" The chairman of the Joint Chiefs stepped forward. Multiple confirmed launches from Russia. China responded approximately 4 minutes later. European systems activated automatically. We're still trying to confirm whether the launches in the Middle East were state authorized. Trying? Our communications are failing. Cyber attack? Partially. He hesitated. The president noticed. What else? The chairman looked toward the intelligence director. She answered instead. The artificial intelligence containment systems have also failed. Several people in the room shifted. The president's expression did not change. How badly? We don't know. That's not an answer. No, ma'am. Another alarm sounded somewhere behind me. Someone immediately silenced it. The intelligence director continued. Financial networks are collapsing. Autonomous military systems have stopped accepting manual overrides in several regions. We're also seeing mass failures in civilian infrastructure. The president rubbed her forehead. Nuclear war, hostile AI, financial collapse. Yes, ma'am. She looked at the Attorney General. And lawyers? The Attorney General blinked. I'm sorry. The president pointed at her. If we're making a list of everything that destroyed civilization, I feel like lawyers deserve at least an honorable mention. Nobody said anything. She looked around the room. Bankers? Still silence. Fine, add bankers too. I looked down at the emergency transcript template. There was a section asking for identified hostile parties and responsible actors. I cleared my throat. Ma'am? Yes? Who should I put here? Where? The list of parties responsible. She stared at me for a moment. Russians, I typed. Chinese, I typed again. Artificial intelligence. Another line. Bankers, I paused. Ma'am, put it in. I did. Lawyers, the Attorney General gave her a look. The president ignored it. Then she became quiet. Her expression slowly changed. For the first time that night, she seemed uncertain, not frightened. Thinking, I waited. Then she said, demons. My fingers stopped. I looked up. Sorry? Demons. The room went silent in a different way. Before, the silence had been fear. Now it was confusion. The president looked directly at me. Put demons. I glanced toward the chief of staff. He avoided my eyes. That was not helpful. I had worked in the White House long enough to understand that there were moments when you asked questions and moments when you simply followed instructions. So I typed, demons. Unexpected. But then again, nobody accepted a job this close to power because they wanted normal days. Transcript prepared, I said. Good. The president walked toward the central table. As she moved, something about her caught my attention. At first, I thought it was the emergency lighting. The bunker lights had switched to a strange red-white pattern after the first attacks. But that was not it. She looked brighter, not metaphorically. Literally, there was a faint shine around her skin. I blinked. It disappeared. Or maybe I convinced myself it disappeared. The communications director approached. We have partial emergency broadcast capability. Global? Potentially? We can reach domestic systems for certain. NATO emergency channels are still open. Several international satellite systems are responding. Civilian networks are unstable, but if the signal repeats through enough nodes, it could spread. How many people? We can't estimate. Billions? Possibly millions? Definitely, she nodded. Good enough. The communications director hesitated. Madam President, we need to prepare a message. I already have one. Everyone looked at her. The chief of staff frowned. You do? Yes. When did you write it? I didn't. Something inside me tightened. She stepped toward the broadcast position. One of the technicians adjusted the cameras. Another checked the emergency microphone. The official seal of the presidency remained mounted behind the speaking platform. It all looked strangely ordinary, like we were preparing for another national address. Except Washington was burning. Except nuclear weapons were crossing the sky. Except half our networks had gone black. Except the president had just blamed demons. Are we broadcasting? She asked. 30 seconds. I watched her. The brightness returned. This time, I knew I was not imagining it. A strange glow seemed to move beneath her skin. It was subtle, almost beautiful. The president had always been striking. That was one of those facts nobody in politics admitted mattered, even though everyone knew it did. She had presence. You noticed when she entered a room. Crowds leaned toward her. Cameras seemed to love her. People who hated her still watched her speeches. There was charismatic. Then there was her. I had seen her walk into hostile rooms and leave with people willing to defend her. I had watched lifelong political opponents suddenly smile after shaking her hand. I had spent years explaining it to myself. Talent, confidence, intelligence, timing. But standing there in that bunker, I began to wonder whether those explanations had ever been enough. 20 seconds. She looked at me. Just one glance. Something moved inside my chest. Loyalty. No. More than loyalty. Love. It rose so suddenly that I nearly gasped. I would die for her. The thought came with absolute certainty. Not in the way people casually say they would die for someone. I genuinely wanted to. If someone had entered the room with a gun at that exact moment, I would have thrown myself between the bullet and her without hesitation. I would have smiled while doing it. That realization should have terrified me. Instead, it filled me with warmth. 10 seconds. My eyes filled with tears. She was magnificent. I had always known that. How had I ever forgotten? Somewhere behind me, an alert began screaming. This one nobody silenced. A military officer stared at a monitor. Impact projections updated. Nobody turned. 5. The president stood in front of the camera. 4. Her eyes met the lens. 3. The light around her grew brighter. 2. I felt my knees weaken. 1. The communications director raised his hand. We're live. The world was watching. Whatever remained of it. The president opened her mouth. I expected a speech. A final message. Something about courage. Humanity, faith, family, history. Instead, she made a sound. I cannot describe it. I have tried. Even now, if words still mean anything wherever this account is found, I cannot explain what came from her mouth. It was not language. I know language. I have spent my life around speeches. It was not singing. There was rhythm in it, but it was not music. It was not a scream. It was not crying. It was not laughter. It was not chanting, although part of my mind wanted to call it that because calling it something familiar made it less terrifying. There are sounds produced by animals, sounds produced by machines, sounds produced by weather. This belonged to none of those categories. The closest I can come is to say that it felt less like hearing a sound and more like remembering something that had been buried inside me before I was born. The first time she made it, every person in the room froze. My skin tightened. My teeth hurt. I could feel something vibrating inside my bones. The president stopped. Silence. Then she repeated the sound. The second time, the room changed. The walls seemed farther away. The ceiling became impossibly high. The lights stretched into long lines. I heard someone begin to cry. The president herself seemed taller. No, not taller. Larger, as if her physical body had always been hiding something enormous. Something that could no longer fit inside her. The glow around her became stronger. Her skin shone like polished gold beneath the bunker lights. I could barely look directly at her. Still, I could not look away. She repeated the message a third time. Something inside me broke. I fell to my knees. So did others. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs dropped first. Then the communications director. Then the Attorney General. One by one, people collapsed around the room. Nobody ordered us to kneel. We simply did. I started laughing. I started crying. Both at once. The fear of nuclear war disappeared. The burning cities no longer mattered. The dying millions no longer mattered. None of it mattered because she was there. I understood that now. She was everything. I pressed my hands together. I do not remember deciding to pray. I just did. I adored her. I worshipped her. I loved her more completely than I had ever loved another living thing. I would have cut out my own heart if she had asked. I would have given her my children, my country, my species, my soul. Anything. She looked at us and smiled. The fourth repetition began. My vision shattered. There is no better word. For one moment, I was still looking at the president. Then, I was looking at something else. Wings erupted from her body. Not two, not four. Hundreds, thousands, they appeared from her shoulders, back, arms, mouth, stomach, neck. Some were covered in white feathers. Others looked burned. Some were transparent. Some were enormous enough that they should not have fit inside the room. Yet they did. The bunker expanded around them. Or reality, I could no longer tell. Eyes opened across her body, everywhere, inside the wings, along her arms, across her face, within the light surrounding her. Thousands of eyes, and every single one looked at me. I screamed, not from fear, from joy. I had never felt anything so complete. To be seen like that, to be known. Every shameful thought, every lie, every private memory, every hidden desire, she saw everything. And she still looked at me. I understood why ancient people had fallen to the ground before their gods. I understood why prophets had blinded themselves. I understood why people offered blood. There are things too beautiful for the human mind to survive. She stepped away from the camera. Or perhaps she moved through the camera. The broadcast continued, the strange message repeated through speakers around the world. On the monitors, I began seeing reactions. A news anchor in London stopped speaking and stared at the screen. People in Tokyo dropped to their knees in the middle of a street. Soldiers inside a command center removed their helmets and began crying. A family somewhere sat around a dinner table, all staring toward a television. Then the feeds began failing, one after another. Not because of technical problems, because the cameras could no longer show what was happening. The images became white, then red, then black. The president came toward me. I could not breathe. The thousands of eyes watched. The wings unfolded across the entire room. She bent down. One hand touched my cheek. It was warm, gentle, tender, like a mother comforting a frightened child. I sobbed. Madam President. The title sounded ridiculous now. President of what? What nation could contain her? What office could describe her? Her thumb moved slowly across my skin. I felt complete peace. Then another thought entered my mind. Had I been chosen or condemned? I could not tell the difference anymore. Maybe they were the same thing. Behind her, the window disappeared. There was no city beyond it. There was only fire. Not nuclear fire. Something older. Something impossible. Great shapes moved beyond the flames. Things with wings, things with horns, things made from wheels and eyes and mouths. Some descended from above. Others climbed upward from cracks in the earth, and suddenly I understood her earlier answer. Russians, Chinese, AI, bankers, lawyers, demons. We had all assumed she was joking. She had not been. Maybe none of them started the war. Maybe they were only pieces on a board. Maybe what we called nuclear conflict was simply the door opening. The alert behind us grew louder. I looked toward one of the remaining military screens. Missiles were falling. Some disappeared before impact. Others turned in the air. Several transformed into burning shapes that looked like birds. A general crawled toward the president. "Please," he whispered. She looked down at him, his face filled with happiness. Then his body caught fire. He did not scream. He laughed. His uniform burned first, then his skin, then his bones. He continued laughing until there was no mouth left. I should have been horrified. Instead, I envied him. She had noticed him. She had given him something. I wanted the same. The president looked back at me. The glow around her became unbearable. My eyes burned, but I refused to close them. She had chosen me. Surely I had been loyal. I had served. I had believed, hadn't I? A terrible doubt entered my mind. Maybe that was the point. Maybe loyalty had never been mine. Maybe none of my feelings toward her had ever belonged to me. I remembered the campaign, the crowds, people crying when she walked on stage, journalists forgetting questions, opponents suddenly changing positions after private meetings. Her impossible rise, the election, the landslide. There was a reason she had swept the polls. There was a reason I joined her team. There was a reason she captured our attention. I had always thought the reason was charisma. Now I understood. She had been preparing us for years. Every speech, every rally, every photograph, every broadcast, every person who looked into her eyes had opened the door a little wider. The presidency had not been her goal. It had been her platform, the largest stage on Earth. And now every emergency system on the planet was carrying her final message. I looked at the camera. The red light was still on. "How many people are watching?" I whispered. Nobody answered. The president did. All of them. Her voice was no longer human. Behind the words were thousands of other voices, men, women, children, animals, things that had never been alive, things that had been dead for thousands of years. The sound passed through me. I bowed my head. "What happens now?" She smiled. "You wanted history." I stared at her. Fire moved across the ceiling. The bunker walls began to peel away like paper. Behind them was no earth, no concrete, no steel. Only an endless sky filled with burning shapes. Somewhere far above us, something enormous opened an eye. It was bigger than the moon. I began to laugh. Of course this was what had been waiting. All those years, humanity imagined the end would come through our own stupidity. Nuclear war, climate collapse, machines, disease, greed. We were so proud that we assumed even our destruction had to belong to us. But maybe we had never been important enough to end ourselves. Maybe all we had done was build the broadcast system. The president lifted her arms. Every wing unfolded. The sound came again. This time I understood one tiny part of it. Not the words. The meaning. Open. That was what it meant. Open. Every television, every phone, every radio, every mind, every grave, every door. Open, the earth answered. Something beneath us moved. The entire planet seemed to inhale. Then fire arced across the horizon. It did not spread like an explosion. It moved with purpose. Lines of flame connected city to city, continent to continent, drawing symbols too large for any human being to see completely. Oceans boiled beneath them. Mountains split. The sky opened. I could hear people screaming through the broadcast. Billions of voices. Then, one by one, the screams changed. They became the same sound she had made. The message passed from mouth to mouth, from country to country. Human voices joined hers, then voices that were not human. The whole world sang something that was not a song. The president looked down at me. Her hand was still against my face. I wanted to ask whether I had helped cause this, whether preparing the broadcast made me responsible, whether typing one ridiculous word into a transcript had somehow completed a ritual older than civilization. Demons. Maybe it had needed to be written. Maybe it had needed to be officially spoken, recognized by authority, named by the leader of the most powerful country on earth. Maybe governments were never about governing people. Maybe they were simply machines for giving names power. The president leaned closer. All 1,000 eyes focused on me. "Thank you for your service," I cried. Those were the words I had always wanted to hear. Then the fire reached us. It passed through the walls without resistance. The room disappeared. People disappeared. Machines disappeared. For one impossible second, I could see everything. The burning world, the missiles frozen in the sky, cities collapsing, figures rising from oceans, winged shapes descending through clouds, millions kneeling before screens, millions burning, millions smiling, and above all of them, her, not the president. She had never been the president. That had only been the role she needed us to understand. The shape before me opened wider and wider until it covered the whole sky. I saw faces inside it, some human, most not. I saw civilizations that had existed before ours, other worlds, other species, all kneeling, all watching the same final broadcast. And at last I understood that we were not the first. We were only next. The fire entered my body. There was pain. Then there was joy. Then the difference disappeared. My skin became light. My bones became sound. My thoughts began to stretch apart. The final piece of myself that still remembered being human tried to hold on to one question. Chosen or condemned? She answered without speaking, yes, and as the world ended around me, I finally understood why nobody had been able to define what made her so charismatic. Why people loved her. Why crowds worshipped her. Why I would have died for her without hesitation. We had recognized her long before we remembered what she was. The end had not begun when the missiles launched. It had begun years earlier, when we first looked at her and could not look away. The missiles were only fireworks. The war was only an announcement. The broadcast was the invitation. And when the last human voice joined hers, when every screen burned white and the sky finally split open, there was nothing left to prevent what had been waiting outside. The end had come, and we had welcomed it ourselves. Story 2. I was 11 years old when I died. At least, that is the easiest way I know how to explain it. Most people cannot point to one exact day and say that was the moment everything in their life changed forever. They remember birthdays, holidays, graduations, weddings, the first person they ever loved, or the day someone close to them died. I remember a tree. I remember the smell of wet bark under my hands. I remember hearing my best friend laughing somewhere below me. And more than anything, I remember the old oak tree groaning beneath my weight like it knew something terrible was about to happen. Even now, years later, I still dream about that tree. It stood at the edge of Blackwood Forest, behind my grandparents' farmhouse. Nobody knew exactly how old it was. Even the oldest people in the village said it had been there when they were children, and their parents had told them the same thing. It was huge. Its trunk was thick enough that 3 adults joining hands probably could not have wrapped their arms around it. Its branches twisted outward over the field like enormous fingers trying to grab the sky. The adults always warned us not to climb it. My granddad warned me more than anyone. That tree is rotten, he used to say. One day, it's going to come down. Naturally, every child in the village climbed it. Warnings did not mean much when you were 11. If anything, being told not to do something only made us want to do it more. That afternoon was warm and bright. The sky was almost perfectly blue. Summer had turned the grass deep green, insects buzzed around the fields, and somewhere in the distance I could hear birds calling from inside Blackwood Forest. My best friend Jamie and I had spent most of the day messing around outside. Eventually, as we always seemed to do, we ended up near the oak tree. Jamie looked up at the highest branches, and then at me. "You won't climb all the way up." "I will." "No, you won't." "I will." "You'll fall." "I won't." I still think about those words. I won't. If I had known what was waiting for me after the fall, I would never have touched that tree. I started climbing. At first it was easy. The lower branches were thick and strong. I had climbed them dozens of times before. My hands knew where to grab without even thinking. Jamie stayed on the ground, shouting up at me. Higher. So I went higher. The bark scraped my palms. Small pieces broke beneath my fingers. The branches became thinner. The ground slowly moved farther and farther away. Eventually, I looked down. That was a mistake. Jamie looked tiny. The field looked strangely flat from that height, and my grandparents' farmhouse seemed much farther away than it really was. My stomach twisted. That's high enough. Jamie shouted. I grinned down at him. I should have listened. Instead, I reached for one more branch. There was a crack. Not a little snap. A crack. Loud and sudden, like a gun firing beside my head. The branch dropped beneath me. For one impossible second, I felt weightless. I remember birds exploding out of the top of the tree. I remember looking up at the sky while my body fell backward. I remember everything spinning. And strangely, one thought went through my head. So this is what flying feels like. Then the ground rushed toward me. Everything went black. The darkness did not hurt. That was the first thing I noticed. There was no pain. At first, I was not even scared. I thought I had simply closed my eyes. So I tried opening them. Nothing happened. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I realized something was wrong. The darkness was not around me. It was everything. There was no ground under my feet, no wind, no sound, no warmth, no cold. I could not feel my heart beating. I could not even feel my own body properly. There was only blackness, endless blackness. Mum? My voice disappeared immediately. No echo, no answer. Mum. Nothing. I started screaming. I screamed for my mother, then my dad, then my granddad, then Jamie. I screamed until it felt like my throat should have been bleeding, but there was no pain, no air, no sound except my own voice. And then something answered, not with words, with breathing, slow, heavy, very close. I froze. The breathing came again. I felt warm air against the back of my neck. That should have been impossible. There was no wind there, no body, nothing, but something was breathing behind me. I spun around. There was nothing. Just blackness. The breathing stopped. For a few seconds, I convinced myself I had imagined it. Then I noticed another problem. I was sinking. I did not understand how. There was no floor beneath me, yet my feet felt as though they were slowly disappearing into wet earth. I tried pulling them free. Nothing happened. The darkness climbed over my ankles, then my shins, then my knees. I struggled harder. I kicked. I screamed. I begged. The darkness continued rising. It reached my waist, then my chest. I could feel pressure around me now, cold and heavy, squeezing like deep water. It moved up my neck. Just before it reached my mouth, everything changed. I was standing in a forest, but not Blackwood Forest, not any forest that belonged in our world. Above me was something that looked like a sky, but it was not a sky. It looked like one enormous slab of dark stone stretching forever overhead. Thousands of thin cracks ran through it. A dull red light glowed inside those cracks. There was no sun, no moon, no stars, but somehow I could see everything. The trees around me were dead. Not winter dead, not leafless. Dead. Their trunks were smooth and gray, almost as if someone had peeled away the bark hundreds of years ago. Their branches reached outward like black bones. Nothing moved. There was no wind, no insects, no birds, no animals. The silence was so complete that it made my ears hurt. I stood there for a while, too frightened to move. Then I realized standing still was worse, so I walked. I do not know how long. Maybe minutes, maybe hours, maybe years. Time did not seem to work properly there. The forest never changed. Gray trees, black branches, ash covering the ground. That was another thing I noticed. The ground was covered in a soft gray powder that looked like snow from a distance, but it was ash. Every step sent little clouds around my ankles. Eventually, I saw someone. A woman. She stood between two trees with her back to me. For the first time since arriving there, I felt hope. "And miss?" She did not answer. I moved closer. Her dress looked ancient, long and dark, covered in dirt. The bottom dragged through the ash. "Miss?" Still nothing. "Are you okay?" No reaction. I kept walking toward her. When I was only a few feet away, I slowly reached for her shoulder. Before I touched her, she turned around. I stopped breathing. She had no face, no eyes, no nose, no mouth. There was only pale, smooth skin stretched across the front of her head. I should not have known she was looking at me. She had no eyes, but I knew. I felt her attention lock onto me. Every part of my body screamed at once, "Run!" So I ran. I turned and sprinted through the dead trees. Branches caught my clothes. Ash exploded beneath my feet. My chest burned. I expected to hear footsteps behind me. There were none. No running, no breathing, nothing chasing me. But somehow I knew she was following. Not quickly, not desperately. Patiently, like she already knew where I was going. Like there was nowhere else I could go. Eventually, the trees opened. I stumbled into a massive clearing. I immediately wished I had stayed in the forest. Thousands of people stood there. Men, women, children, old people, young people, all of them perfectly still. They stood shoulder to shoulder across the clearing, facing the same direction. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. They looked like statues made from living flesh. I slowly stepped toward the nearest person. He was a man, maybe in his 40s. His eyes were open. "Hello?" Nothing. I waved my hand in front of his face. No reaction. I touched his arm. His eyes moved. Only his eyes. They rolled toward me. The rest of him remained perfectly still. His lips never moved. But I heard his voice, not through my ears. Inside my head. "Don't let it know you're awake." I stumbled backward. "What?" The whisper came again. But this time it was not only him. Every person in the clearing spoke together. Thousands of voices. Men, women, children, all whispering the same thing. "Don't let it know you're awake." My skin went cold. Then the ground shook. A deep vibration rolled through the clearing. Every person slowly tilted their head upward. I looked toward the forest. Something enormous was moving behind the trees. I could not see its body. The forest was too thick, but I could see what happened as it moved. The tops of the dead trees bent, one after another. Something massive was pushing through them, not walking between the trees, moving above them. The ground trembled again. The people whispered louder. Then all of them said the same thing. Too late. I ran. Again, I had no idea where I was going. I only knew I had to get away. I sprinted back into the forest. The trees seemed endless. No matter how fast I ran, nothing changed. Gray trunks, black branches, ash, silence. I could hear my own breathing now. Fast, panicked. I thought I could feel the ground shaking behind me. I did not look back. Eventually, I heard water. That sound was so normal that I nearly cried. I pushed between the trees and reached a river. Then I realized the river was wrong too. The water did not flow across the ground. It flowed upward. It rose from the earth in one wide moving column and continued straight into the stone sky. The water disappeared into one of the glowing red cracks above. I stood there staring at it. Then I noticed shapes inside the water. Faces, thousands of them. Human faces drifted upward with the current. Men, women, Children. Their eyes were open. Their mouths moved. But no sound came out. One face turned toward me. A little girl. She looked about 6 years old. Her hair floated around her head. She smiled. Then she moved her lips slowly enough for me to understand. It's behind you. I did not turn around. I could not, because I already knew. The breathing had returned. Slow, deep, directly behind my left ear. Warm air touched the side of my neck. I closed my eyes. Please, please don't let me see it. The breathing stopped. For 1 second there was silence. Then something touched my shoulder. One finger. Cold, so cold it felt like ice pressed against my skin. I turned anyway. Nothing. The forest was empty. The river continued flowing upward. Ash covered the ground. There was nobody behind me. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost gave out. Then I looked down. There were footprints around my feet. Not human footprints. Each one looked like a hand had been pushed into the ash. Long fingers, far too long. And each finger had too many joints. The handprints circled me. Again, and again, and again, dozens of times. Whatever had made them had walked around me while I stood with my eyes closed, watching me. Waiting, I understood something then. I was not alone. I had never been alone. I do not remember leaving that place. I do not remember falling asleep. I do not remember waking. One moment, I was staring at those handprints. The next, I opened my eyes under bright white lights. Machines beeped around me. Something covered my mouth. There were tubes, wires, people. For several seconds, I thought I had entered another nightmare. Then someone screamed. Mom. He's awake. The room exploded into movement. Doctors rushed toward me. Nurses surrounded the bed. Someone checked my eyes. Someone touched my wrist. Someone shouted numbers I did not understand. Then my mother appeared. She collapsed beside the bed. She was crying so hard she could barely speak. My father hugged me. He held me so tightly that it hurt. That pain was the first thing that made me believe I was really alive. You're okay, he kept saying. You're okay. I looked around, confused. What happened? Nobody answered at first. Then someone told me, you've been asleep for 4 months. 4 months. I thought they were joking. That could not be right. I had fallen from the tree that afternoon. I had only been gone for... I stopped. How long had I been there? Hours? Days? Years? I honestly did not know. The doctors called my recovery a miracle. Apparently, the fall had caused severe injuries. For a while, they had not been sure I would survive. Even when my body stabilized, I did not wake up. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. My family had waited. 4 months. Then, without warning, I opened my eyes. The doctors asked me question after question. What's your name? I answered. Do you know where you are? The hospital. What year is it? I answered. Do you remember the accident? Yes. Can you move your fingers? I could. Your toes? Yes. Do you know who these people are? My parents. Every answer seemed to make them happier. Then one doctor asked me something different. Did you dream? I looked at him. For a moment, I almost told him everything. The blackness, the breathing, the dead forest, the faceless woman, the people in the clearing, the thing moving behind the trees, the river flowing into the sky, the girl, the handprints. I opened my mouth. Then I lied. No. The doctor smiled. He wrote something on his clipboard. That's perfectly normal. No, it was not. Nothing about what had happened to me was normal. Everyone around the bed continued celebrating. My mother was still crying. My father kept touching my shoulder like he needed to make sure I was really there. A nurse adjusted one of the machines, and then I saw her. A little girl stood in the corner of the hospital room, about 6 years old. The same girl from the river. She wore a hospital gown. It was soaked. Water ran from her hair and sleeves. Drops fell steadily onto the polished floor. Nobody else noticed. Not the doctors, not the nurses, not my parents. She looked directly at me. Slowly, she lifted one finger, pressed it against her lips. Shh. I stopped breathing. The room suddenly became cold. The girl smiled, not happily. Sadly, then she whispered 3 words. "It's still here." The lights flickered. Every heart monitor in the room suddenly produced one long, continuous tone. For a fraction of a second, everyone froze. My mother, my father, the doctors, the nurses. Every person in the room became completely still. Nobody blinked. Nobody breathed. They looked exactly like the people in the clearing. My heart began pounding. Then everything returned to normal. The monitors started beeping again. The lights stopped flickering. My mother continued talking from the exact place she had stopped. A nurse adjusted my blanket. Someone laughed. Nobody reacted. Nobody asked what had happened. It was as if that frozen second had never existed. I looked toward the corner. The little girl was gone. For several moments, I stared at the empty space where she had been. Then, I noticed the floor. There was water on it, a small puddle where she had stood. And leading away from that puddle were wet prints. They crossed the polished hospital floor, straight toward my bed. But they were not footprints. They were handprints. Long, thin handprints. The same shape I had seen in the ash. One after another. As if something had crawled out of that dead forest. Crawled through the darkness. Crawled across whatever distance separated that place from ours. And stopped beside my hospital bed. I did not tell anyone. Not then. Not for years. What could I have said? That I had died? That while my body lay unconscious for 4 months, I had gone somewhere else? That something there had seen me? That I had broken some rule by waking up? My parents would have blamed the head injury. The doctors would have called it a dream, a hallucination, brain activity caused by trauma. Maybe that is what it was. I tried very hard to believe that. For a long time, I almost succeeded. I grew older. I recovered. I went back to school. Eventually, people stopped treating me like the boy who had nearly died. The tree came down several years later during a storm. Granddad called me when it happened. He said he was glad to finally see the thing gone. I was too. But destroying the tree did not stop the dreams. Sometimes I still return to that forest. I see the stone sky, the red cracks, the dead trees. I hear thousands of voices whispering, "Don't let it know you're awake." Sometimes I see the river. Sometimes I see the little girl. And sometimes I wake during the night because I can feel warm breath against the back of my neck. I never turn around immediately. I have learned not to. A few years ago, I finally told my mother what I remembered. She listened quietly. When I finished, she looked pale. Then she told me something she had never mentioned before. During those 4 months in the hospital, nurses often found wet marks around my bed. They assumed someone had spilled water. My mother said it happened even when nobody had brought water into the room. She also said that during the final week before I woke up, I started moving my hands in my sleep. Not randomly. I would press my palms against the mattress, lift them, move them forward, press them down again, over and over, like I was crawling. When she told me that, I could not speak. I asked whether she remembered anything else. She hesitated. Then she said that the night before I woke up, one of the nurses complained about a child wandering the hallway. A little girl, about 6 years old, wet hair, hospital gown. The nurse followed her around a corner, but there was nobody there. No child had gone missing from any room. No patient matched the description. My mother told herself the nurse had been tired. I told myself the same thing. I still do. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative means that place was real. It means the people in the clearing were real. It means whatever moved behind those dead trees was real. And if that is true, then dying did not free me from it. Coming back did not save me. Maybe I was never supposed to wake up. Maybe the warning was not about hiding from it while I was there. Maybe don't let it know you're awake meant something else. Maybe waking up here was what caught its attention. I do not know. All I know is that sometimes, late at night, I wake to complete silence. No cars outside, no pipes, no wind, nothing. Then I hear breathing. Slow, heavy, close, and if I force myself to look at the floor beside my bed, sometimes I see marks where no marks should be, not feet. Hands, long fingers, too many joints. Damp prints leading from the darkest corner of the room toward me. One after another. Closer, closer, closer. Whatever I found when I died did not stay there. Something followed me home. Story 3. It has been 14 years since the event, and everyone except Laura has accepted that communication with the outside world is gone. The others stopped hoping years ago. Laura never did. Every morning she wakes, prepares herself, and goes to the radio tower as though she is attending some private religious service. The tower has become her chapel. Cleaning herself before leaving is the ritual. The short walk across the ice is her pilgrimage. Sitting at the radio and sending messages into endless silence is her prayer. She's been doing it for years. Calling, listening, waiting, believing that somewhere, someone is still alive and listening back. Something wakes me this morning with an immediate feeling of dread. I don't know what it is at first. There is no alarm, no warning from the systems. No sudden noise, just a terrible certainty inside me that today is wrong. I find Laura getting ready. Don't go. The words come out before I even think about them. She continues dressing. I move closer. Laura, please, just miss one day. She barely reacts. One day, I repeat. That's all I'm asking. Stay here today. She smiles. That light, patient smile. The kind people give when they think someone they love is worrying over nothing. I hate that smile today. Nothing is going to happen, she says. Or maybe that is simply how I remember her answering. Sometimes memories change after you live inside them for long enough. I follow her through our cramped living quarters. Everywhere she goes, I remain close behind her. I plead. I warn. I make promises. We could stay inside together. We could visit Judith. Judith has been working on a new sculpture in the studio, and Laura hasn't seen the latest version. I remind her about Aiden. He's cooking today. Fettuccine Alfredo, I say, trying to make it sound irresistible. Come on. You know how he gets when someone actually appreciates his cooking. Nothing. Laura keeps preparing. My fear grows stronger. Stay. Please stay. Just today. She heads toward the airlock. The vents begin to hiss. Disinfectant sprays from the nozzles. A cloud of antiseptic mist covers her suit. We didn't always do that. During the first year after the event, we were still thinking mostly about protecting ourselves from whatever might be outside. By year 2, when the silence had become truly frightening, we began thinking differently. Maybe we weren't the ones who needed protection. Maybe whatever remained outside needed protection from us. So we changed our procedures. Anything leaving the habitat had to be sterilized. Anything returning went through the same process. Laura stands in the spray each morning like someone being baptized. Then the outer door opens. She steps outside, and I cannot go with her. I am tied to my post. I always have been. The radio tower is 27 of Laura's steps from the habitat. Exactly 27. I know, because I have watched her cross that distance more times than I can count. I know the rhythm of those steps. I know which one makes her lean slightly into the wind. I know where the snow becomes uneven. I know the exact moment she reaches the tower door. Sometimes I count those steps in my dreams. In those dreams, I walk beside her. I'm strong, whole, useful. I'm everything I was supposed to be. In those dreams, I am there for her. The tower wasn't always outside. Before the event, you could reach it through an internal corridor. It was easy. Safe, warm. Then part of the corridor collapsed. We tried to repair it. We couldn't. Not properly. Resources were too limited. After that, the only way to reach the tower was from outside. There was a vote. There were always votes in those early years. What mattered more? Communications? Power? Food production? Water recycling? Medical systems? Structural repairs? You can call people scientists, specialists, researchers, engineers, explorers. Strip away enough comfort and certainty, though, and eventually everyone becomes the same thing. A survivor. Survival 1. The damaged corridor remained damaged. Our supplies went towards systems that kept people alive. Laura hated that decision. But what about the other colonies? She asked. I remember the room going quiet. Nobody wanted to answer. The real answer was ugly. Forget them. We have our own problems. We need to survive. Nobody actually said it exactly like that, but that was what they meant. There was another meaning beneath it, too. How can you even ask us to sacrifice food, heat, oxygen, or repairs for people we don't know are alive? Laura looked at me afterward as though I had betrayed her. Maybe I had. I tried explaining it later when we were alone. That became one of the first cracks between us. How can you condemn them? She demanded. What if they're still alive? We don't know that. Exactly, we don't know what happened anywhere. You don't know they're dead. That argument happened more than once. Eventually, it became part of our routine. Other couples kissed before sleeping. We debated whether abandoning radio contact was morally acceptable. You don't know they're gone, she would say. There was always fire in her when she said it. That was one of the things I loved about her. Even when I hated what she was saying, I would watch her become angry and alive and beautiful, and for a moment I would almost agree with anything. Then reality would return. I need to take care of the people who are still here, I would tell her. She hated that sentence. I hated saying it. But it was true. My responsibility was to the living. The people inside our habitat, the people breathing the oxygen we could still produce, the people eating food we could still grow, the people relying on systems that could fail at any moment. What am I supposed to be without that tower? Laura once cried, and I answered quietly. What am I supposed to be if all of you are dead? Neither of us had a good answer. Now she is going to that door again. The outside door, the one that leads toward her tower. I need to stop her. I know I need to. But I am late. I'm always late. I got distracted by my rounds. The same people, the same rooms. Judith is in the studio. She is working on her sculpture. She is always working on it, carefully adding to something that will never be finished. I know that now. Aiden is in the galley. Fettuccine Alfredo again. Of course. He always makes it. He found something people liked and decided that was good enough. Outside, the wind begins to rise. I hear it through the structure. That horrible scream. A long, sharp sound passing around the habitat. It reminds me of a woman crying somewhere far away. A banshee. That's what I used to call it. I still hear it at night. A storm is coming. I know what happens next. She won't survive. The calculations begin again in my mind. Temperature, wind speed, distance, visibility, exposure, 27 steps. Such a short distance, such a stupid distance to die across. This is the part I hate, the part after we fight, the part where I suit up too. Maybe I wasted too much time. Maybe if I hadn't checked the others first, I could have reached. Maybe I should have broken procedure. Maybe I should have risked everything. But protocol was protocol. That phrase sounds so pathetic now. I remember pulling the suit over myself. Aiden designed it. We didn't have enough proper materials, so he used whatever he could find. Metal disappeared from half the kitchen. People complained. Then winter got worse, and they stopped complaining. I enter the airlock. The disinfectant begins spraying. The mist covers me. Judith helped develop that system. Later, she made sculptures about it. She tried turning the trauma of those years into art. Maybe that was how she survived. Maybe it was how she broke. The antibacterial fog fills my vision, and once again I am forced to remember sacrifice. The things we gave up. The people we became. The promises we made. The outer door opens. Cold enters immediately. Before all of this, before the event, before the years of silence, Laura and I were different people. I remember Christchurch. Months before we left for Antarctica, we had received confirmation that we were going. That night, we booked a hotel and celebrated like children. "We're going to Antarctica, babe," she whispered. There was sunlight coming through the room. Warm afternoon light. I remember thinking that warmth was ordinary. That's the kind of thing you don't understand until it becomes rare. "We'll save the world," Laura said. I laughed. I said something sarcastic. Probably something about saving it after breakfast. I was always trying to sound clever. She rolled her eyes and pulled herself against me. We were young enough to think ideals were simple. People say things like save the world when they haven't yet been asked what they're willing to sacrifice to do it. Eventually, we fell asleep. I remember her voice near my ear. "We will," she whispered. She wasn't joking anymore. I hugged her tighter. Something about the way she said it made the words feel important, like an oath. So I agreed. Yeah, I told her, "We will." My suit is awkward in the storm. The wind pushes me sideways. Snow blasts across my visor. Every step takes effort. But I cannot stop. The tower isn't supplied for emergencies. That is the problem. Laura goes there every day, but nobody planned for her to become trapped inside. The storm will get worse tomorrow. She will still go. Of course she will. So I decide to prepare for it. At night, while she sleeps, I load a sledge. Food, emergency heat blankets, water equipment, medical supplies. Enough for someone to survive inside the tower for weeks if necessary. I tell myself I am being smart. Prepared, loving. I don't tell her. I should have. I was an idiot. I pull the sledge across the ice. The storm is building. The tower appears through the snow, 27 steps from home. That sounds like nothing until the wind is strong enough to throw you down. I finally make it. My hands barely work. I am half frozen. But the supplies are intact. I put everything inside. Food, heat blankets, auto brew water unit. A person could survive a month here now, maybe longer. I did it. I protected her. Except I didn't, because I went back. Why did I go back? I ask myself that question every time. Then I remember. Because that one day, that single day, Laura wasn't at the tower. For once, she listened to me. She didn't go. Instead, she visited Judith. She talked to Aiden. She ate. She laughed. She spent one entire day living instead of trying to keep strangers alive. I didn't know that when I left the supplies. I expected her to come. I waited. The storm grew stronger. She never appeared. And I realized what had happened. She was inside the habitat. Safe. I was outside, so I tried to return. 27 steps. That was all. I thought I could beat the storm. 27 steps. People can cross 27 steps without thinking. You can cross 27 steps while holding a conversation. You can cross 27 steps while looking at your phone. You can cross 27 steps before realizing you've moved. But not in that storm. Not in Antarctica. Not when the world decides that distance means something different. There is another storm coming now. I try warning Laura again. She is putting on her suit. Stay inside. She doesn't hear me. A storm is coming. Nothing. I move close to her. I try to stand between her and the airlock. My body no longer matters enough for that. She passes through me. Or maybe I pass through her. It is difficult to say. The disinfectant begins. Wind howls beyond the door. I try again. Laura, my words are nothing. Less than wind. Less than breath. Ghosts have no voice. The outer door opens. She leaves. Only after she is gone do I understand. I wasn't following Laura. I was haunting the place where she used to be. Everything goes dark. The storm arrives. This time, Laura is trapped in the radio tower. She sits there sending calls into silence. Again, and again, and again. She doesn't know if anyone is listening. Inside the habitat, I remain trapped in my own routine. Something has changed. Usually I replay what happened. Now I seem to be living what might have happened. A different version. The station is dark. Dead, yet I continue making my rounds. Judith is still sculpting. Aiden is still cooking. Fettuccine Alfredo. Again, I begin to hate it. I hate the smell. I hate the thought of it. Eventually, I think I could murder Aiden just to stop him cooking it. Judith becomes worse. Always working. Always creating something that never becomes complete. I start wanting to scream at her. Finish it, but she never does. Nobody changes. Nothing changes. My cycle continues. Again, we voted in year 4 to accept the other colonies as lost. There had been no contact, no response, no evidence. The event had cut the world apart. We couldn't keep spending resources on hope. Laura never accepted the vote. Every day she called. Every day she listened. Every day the silence answered. Now she is trapped in the tower. Alone. Still transmitting. How will she survive? That was what I used to think. Now I know. Maybe she will. Because of me. Because of that stupid sledge. Because years ago, in another life, I filled the tower with supplies. Days pass. Then, weeks. I don't know if time still works properly for me. I walk where Laura walked. I repeat her path. I visit Judith. Aiden, rooms that no longer feel alive. Their unfinished creations remain. Judith's sculpture. Aiden's endless meal. Everything seems trapped at the point where life stopped moving. Then, suddenly, light. Not memory. Not dream light. Real light. The habitat comes alive. Systems begin humming. Machines wake. Doors respond. Lights flicker on one by one. For the first time in what feels like forever, something is different. I move toward the generator. Laura is there. Laura, alive, older, tired, but alive. And she isn't alone. Someone stands beside her. A stranger. For a moment, jealousy hits me before I can stop it. They are attractive, I suppose. Weather-beaten. Their nose is red from the cold. Their cheeks are rough and chapped. Their equipment looks ancient. Not just old. Older than ours. The design is from one of the early colonies. A colony established before we even left for Antarctica. I stare. I understand. Someone heard her. After 14 years of calling into nothing, someone heard Laura. They followed the signal. They came. The stranger is moving around the generator with practiced hands. Capable, present, alive, Laura stands close to them. They speak. I cannot hear everything. Maybe I don't need to. The station is waking. Power, heat, systems. The laboratories, the stored samples, all the work we fought to preserve. It can be saved. Laura can be saved. The others, if anything remains of them, might matter again too. Everything we thought was lost suddenly has a future. Laura's impossible faith was right. All those mornings, all those transmissions, all those hours speaking into emptiness. Her prayer was finally answered. Somebody heard her scream into the void, and they came. I watched the stranger look at Laura. There is concern there. Respect too. Maybe something else. I feel jealousy again. It is stupid, small, human. I want to stand between them. I want to tell this stranger that she is mine. That I knew her before the ice. That I loved her in sunlight. That we once lay together in Christchurch and promised each other we were going to save the world. But I can't. And she isn't mine. Not anymore. Maybe she never was. People aren't possessions. Especially not the living belonging to the dead. I watched Laura smile. Not the fanatic smile she wore when I begged her to stop transmitting. Not the exhausted smile of someone refusing to accept defeat. A real smile. She looks relieved. For the first time in years, she doesn't have to believe alone. Someone finally answered. Maybe I always knew. Maybe somewhere beneath all my arguments about resources and survival, I understood that keeping Laura alive was more important than winning our fight. We voted to survive. That was what we told ourselves. Survival first, communication later. Save the people inside, forget the people beyond us. But Laura chose hope, and I chose her. Even when I thought I was choosing practicality, even when I thought I was only leaving emergency supplies in a tower, even when that choice killed me. I had loaded enough food and heat into that little room to keep her alive through a storm. I thought I was protecting one stubborn woman. Instead, I was protecting the future. Maybe this was the timeline I chose without knowing it. The one where I die 27 steps from home. The one where Laura survives. The one where she keeps transmitting. The one where, years later, someone answers. I look at the stranger again. They are helping Laura. They speak to her gently. They are real in a way I haven't been for a very long time. Warm, breathing, capable of touching her, capable of standing beside her when the next storm comes. I want to hate them. I can't, because Laura is smiling. And that was always what I wanted, wasn't it? Not the tower, not the colony, not to be right. Her safe, alive, happy. We promised we would save the world. Maybe young people are allowed to misunderstand what that means. Maybe saving the world was never about saving everyone at once. Maybe sometimes it means protecting one person long enough for them to keep calling. One voice, one signal, one impossible belief that someone is still listening. Laura looks toward the lights as more of the habitat comes back to life. For a second, I imagine she looks directly at me. I know she doesn't. Still, I let myself believe it. Just once. I loved her. I still do. I think some part of me will continue loving her for as long as I remain trapped in these rooms, repeating the same memories. But maybe the repetition can end now. Maybe I can finally stop trying to warn her. The storm came. I lost. She lived. And somehow, that was enough. I hope the person who found her understands what she is. I hope they listen when she talks about impossible things. I hope they don't laugh when she insists that hope matters. I hope they argue with her when she needs someone to argue. I hope they sit beside her when she grows tired. I hope they learn that she likes to pretend she doesn't need anyone. I hope they know when to let her be stubborn and when to drag her back inside. Most of all, I hope they love her. Not because I want someone to replace me. Nobody could. Not because she owes me anything for what happened. She doesn't. I just don't want her to spend whatever remains of her life alone. The station hums around us. Lights glow in corridors that have been dark for years. The dead place is waking. The stranger reaches toward Laura. She takes their hand. For once, I don't follow. I stay where I am, and I watch her walk away. I hope they love her as I once did. I hope she lets them. I hope she is happy. Story 4. I moved to California because I wanted to escape. Escape what exactly? Even now I'm not completely sure. Maybe I wanted to escape my hometown. Maybe I wanted to escape old memories, old people, old expectations. Maybe I was just tired of looking at the same roads in Georgia, the same trees, the same small stores, and the same faces I had known for most of my life. Whatever the reason was, I convinced myself California would fix something inside me. Beaches, palm trees, warm weather, big cities, people from everywhere. A place where nobody knew who I was or where I came from. So I packed what I could fit into my car and left Georgia behind. That was 3 years ago. At first, California felt almost unreal to me. Everything was different from where I grew up. The streets were louder. The people dressed differently. There was graffiti covering walls that would have been scrubbed clean back home. Street performers played music on sidewalks, danced outside stores, or did tricks for tourists. I even grew to enjoy things I never imagined myself liking. The food, the crowds, the late-night energy. And yeah, I'll admit it, I grew to like the weed too. But the thing that became most important to me was the ocean. Growing up in Georgia, I had been surrounded by woods, small roads, and quiet towns. The ocean felt completely different. It made me feel small in a way I liked. The first time I stood on a California beach and looked toward the horizon, I felt like I could breathe properly for the first time in years. The beach became my sanctuary. Every evening, unless the weather was terrible or something important came up, I went for a walk along the shoreline. Sometimes I wore shoes. Most nights, I didn't. I liked feeling the sand beneath my feet. I liked walking close enough to the water that the waves would occasionally wash over my ankles. I watched the foam slide back into the ocean. I listened to the steady crashing of the waves. And I thought about Georgia, about California, about people I missed, about people I didn't, about work, about money, about what I was going to do with the rest of my life. Those walks became almost like therapy. I honestly believe that was where I finally started to understand myself, which makes what happened last night feel like some kind of cruel joke, because the same place that made me feel alive is going to kill me. I know that now. I know death is coming. I know there is nothing I can do to stop it. And as I write this, every passing minute makes me regret coming to California more than I ever thought possible. Last night began like hundreds of nights before it. Nothing unusual happened at work. I clocked out at the end of my shift, went to the gym for a short workout, then stopped for food afterward. Chipotle, nothing fancy. I ate in my car, checked my phone, and then drove toward the beach. By the time I arrived, the evening crowd was already starting to thin out. I kicked off my shoes and left them in the car. The sand was still warm from the heat of the day. It had been around 95 degrees, maybe more. The weather had been brutal, but after sunset the wind coming off the ocean helped. I started walking. The breeze moved through my hair. The water looked dark blue beneath the fading light. For a while, I didn't think about anything important. Then my mind drifted back to Georgia. I started comparing my old life with my new one. I thought about how different I had become. I thought about whether leaving had actually solved anything, or whether I had simply carried all my problems across the country. I was so deep in thought that I barely noticed how low the sun had become. The sky slowly darkened. More people left the beach. Families packed up their umbrellas. Couples disappeared toward the parking lots. Joggers passed less often. Soon, long sections of the shoreline were completely empty. I didn't care. I just kept walking, one foot in front of the other. Step, step, step. The rhythm of walking matched the waves. Step, 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 then crack. Pain exploded through my right heel. I shouted and nearly fell. My foot jerked upward immediately. For 1 second, I thought I had stepped on broken glass. The pain was sharp and deep, like something had stabbed straight into my heel. I grabbed my ankle and lifted my foot. Blood was already dripping from a small puncture wound. Damn it! I sat down in the sand. The wound itself wasn't large, but the pain was intense. There was something else too. Cold. My foot felt cold. Not cool from ocean water. Cold. Really cold. The strange part was that the cold seemed to be coming from inside my heel. I looked around the sand, trying to find whatever I had stepped on. A broken bottle seemed most likely. People left trash on beaches all the time. Maybe glass had washed ashore. Maybe someone had dropped something sharp. Then I saw it. A thin object was sticking out of the sand. Moonlight reflected off its surface. At first glance it looked metallic. Maybe part of a broken can. Maybe a piece of wire. Drops of my blood covered its sharp tip. I leaned down carefully. With one hand holding my injured foot, I reached with the other and pulled the object from the sand. The instant my fingers touched it, I almost dropped it. It was freezing, not simply cold. Frozen, I stared at it in my palm. That was when I realized it wasn't metal. It was almost transparent. The surface reflected the moonlight so brightly that I had mistaken it for silver. It looked like a long, sharp ice crystal, a piece of ice, sitting in hot sand. After a 95-degree day, I remember just staring at it. My brain kept trying to find an explanation. Maybe it had fallen out of somebody's cooler. But if that were true, it should have melted long ago. Maybe there was dry ice nearby. But it didn't look like dry ice. It looked like normal clear ice, except it was sharper, almost like a crystal that had grown naturally into a point. Then I noticed what was happening in my foot. The pain was disappearing. The numbness was spreading. The crystal in my hand began to shrink. I watched it melt. Except it didn't actually melt. No water ran over my palm. My hand didn't become wet. The crystal simply became smaller. It disappeared from the outside inward. I stared as it shrank to half its size, then a quarter, then almost nothing. I remember thinking that it looked less like melting and more like it was being absorbed into my skin. That sounds insane, I know. But that is exactly what it looked like. The last tiny piece vanished against my palm. Nothing remained. No water. No residue. Nothing. I turned my hand over. Completely dry. That was when I looked at my heel again. The puncture wound was gone. Not closing. Gone. The skin had sealed over completely. The only sign anything had happened was a dark blue pattern spreading beneath the skin. Thin lines, like veins, or cracks in ice. I pressed my foot against the sand. No pain. I stood. Still no pain. But the cold was worse. It covered my whole foot now. Icy, deep. It felt as though my bones had been stored in a freezer. I should have gone to the hospital. I know that now. At the time, I told myself I would wait until morning. Maybe the cold would disappear. Maybe the blue lines were bruising. Maybe I had imagined the ice crystal. I just wanted to get back to my car. So I started walking. I tried not to limp. Each step felt stranger than the one before it. The cold was spreading. First through my ankle, then into my calf. It moved upward in thin paths, almost like something was crawling through my veins. After a few minutes, I started feeling a strange cold sensation in my other foot too. That should have terrified me. Instead, I kept making excuses. Shock, adrenaline, nerve damage. Anything. By the time I reached the parking lot, I was shivering. The air wasn't cold, not even close. Other people were walking around in shorts and t-shirts. I got into my car and immediately turned on the heater. Maximum temperature. Maximum fan. Hot air blasted from the vents. It did almost nothing. I held my hands directly in front of the vents. They felt cold, too. During the drive home, things became worse. My teeth started chattering. My entire body shook. I remember looking toward the windshield and seeing faint fog in front of my face every time I breathed. That shouldn't have been possible. The air inside the car was hot. I kept telling myself that. Hot. The heater was blasting. My skin should have been sweating. Instead, I felt like I was driving through winter with the windows open. Then the voices started. At first, I thought the radio had turned on. I reached toward it. It was already off. The sound continued. Whispers, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. They weren't coming from the speakers. They weren't coming from outside. They were inside my head. I tried to focus on the road. The voices grew louder. They spoke over each other. Men, women, children, old voices, young voices. Some sounded close. Some seemed impossibly far away. None of them were speaking any language I understood. The words sounded wrong, ancient and futuristic at the same time. Harsh sounds mixed with soft ones. Clicks, breaths, long sounds that seemed impossible for a human mouth to make. I hit the side of my head with one hand. Stop. The voices continued. I turned on the radio. Music filled the car. The voices rose above it. I turned the volume higher. It didn't matter. They were inside me. By the time I reached my apartment building, the voices had become quieter. Not gone, just distant, like a crowd speaking behind a thick wall. I parked and stumbled toward my apartment. My hands were shaking so badly that I struggled to get the key into the lock. Then I noticed my fingernails. They were blue, not slightly blue, dark blue, like the hands of a corpse. I rushed inside. The first thing I did was turn on the shower. I pushed the temperature as hot as it would go. Steam filled the bathroom. The mirror disappeared beneath fog. I stepped underneath the water. I expected pain. The water was hot enough to burn. Instead, it felt cold, like standing beneath a waterfall in the middle of winter. I turned the water hotter. Nothing changed. My skin continued turning blue. The color spread from my fingers up my arms. I stayed under the water for nearly an hour. Steam rolled around me. My bathroom became unbearably hot. But inside my body, the cold remained. Eventually, the water temperature dropped. That was when the voices noticed. I don't know how else to explain it. The moment the water became cooler, the whispers exploded. They screamed inside my head. I dropped to my knees in the shower. Stop. The voices answered in that impossible language. My nose started running. I wiped it. The mucus felt thick and freezing. My teeth chattered so hard that my jaw hurt. I knew one thing. I needed more heat. I turned off the shower, wrapped myself in towels and blankets, and went into the kitchen. I turned on the oven. Then I opened the door and sat on the floor in front of it. Heat poured over me. I pulled my knees to my chest. For the first time since leaving the beach, the voices became quieter. The heat pushed them back. That scared me more than anything else. Whatever was happening inside me didn't like warmth. I stayed in front of the oven. Minutes became hours. I shifted positions constantly. No matter how close I got, I still felt as though I were lying on a block of ice. My skin was cold. My bones were colder. The voices remained somewhere behind my thoughts. I could feel them, scratching, pressing, waiting. Eventually, their strange language started making sense. Not completely. Individual words. Frozen, heat, flames, ocean, death. The words appeared between long sections of language I still couldn't understand. Some voices sounded frightened. Some were angry. Some were crying. Some whispered as if they were already dying. I started to realize something. They weren't speaking to me. Not exactly. They were remembering. I was hearing pieces of them. Fragments. I don't know how many people there were. Dozens, maybe hundreds. The heat from the oven became intense. The tiles beneath me were warm, yet snot dripping from my nose began freezing before reaching my lip. I wiped at it with shaking fingers. Tiny pieces of frost broke away. I started crying. That made things worse. The tears froze as they moved down my cheeks. One reached the edge of my jaw, hardened into a tiny piece of ice, and fell onto the kitchen floor. Ting! It landed on the hot tile. Then melted. I stared at the little wet spot. That was when I understood I was in serious danger. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I started to drift off, the voices grew louder. So I sat beside the oven, shaking and listening. At some point, however, I must have closed my eyes. I swear it was only for a second, maybe two. When I opened them again, I was no longer in my apartment. I was standing on the beach. The same beach. The same section of shoreline. The place where I had stepped on the crystal. I was naked. I don't know how I got there. My apartment was miles away. My car wasn't nearby. My clothes were gone. Nothing made sense. I looked around. The sun was beginning to rise. Soft orange light stretched across the horizon. The ocean reflected it. Normally, sunrise on the beach would have been beautiful. That morning, it looked like the end of the world. I was sweating. At the same time, I was freezing. Beads of sweat rolled down my chest. When they fell from my skin, they didn't land as water. They became ice. Small crystals hit the sand. Some were long and sharp, some were thin like needles. I watched one drop from my arm. It landed near my foot. Then it moved. I froze. The crystal pushed itself into the sand. Not melted. Not sank. Moved, it twisted downward like a worm. Another piece did the same. Then another. Dozens of tiny ice crystals were burrowing beneath the beach. I suddenly understood what I had stepped on the previous night. It had come from someone else. Someone who had stood where I was standing. Someone who had gone through the same thing. The voices became clearer. They had tried. That sentence formed inside my mind. They had tried. Tried to stop it. Tried to survive. Tried to warn people. I looked toward the beach. People were beginning to arrive. Morning runners, couples, families carrying chairs and umbrellas, parents dragging coolers through the sand, children running toward the water, ordinary people beginning an ordinary summer day. I wanted to scream. My mouth opened. Only fog came out. The voices spoke together. New host. I shook my head. No, my voice barely worked. New host? No. First case. Then another word. California, I finally understood. I was not the first host. I was simply the first here. Whatever this was, it had reached California through me. My sweat was producing crystals. The crystals were burying themselves beneath the sand, waiting, exactly like the one I had stepped on. Someone else would step on them. Then someone else. Then someone else. The sun rose higher. The beach grew warmer. And the hotter it became outside, the colder I became inside. The voices screamed louder. More people noticed me. A man jogging near the water slowed down. A woman stared at me from behind sunglasses. A couple laughed nervously, probably assuming I was drunk or high. Then their expressions changed, because snow started falling. Not from the sky, From me, tiny white flakes drifted from my ears. At first, only a few, then dozens. They landed across my shoulders. My skin was bright blue now. Ice formed around my feet. Snow collected in the sand. It didn't melt. That should have been impossible beneath the rising California sun. But the pile grew. People began taking out their phones. Someone shouted toward me. I couldn't understand them. The voices inside my head drowned everything else out. I could feel the cold everywhere now. Inside my stomach, my lungs, my heart, my brain. Every breath hurt. The air moving through my throat felt like inhaling broken glass. Fog poured from my mouth, my fingers barely moved. The strange thing was that deep inside my chest, I began feeling warm. A tiny patch of warmth. It was almost comforting. The voices noticed. Sleep, I shook my head. Sleep, no. My heart began slowing. I could feel every beat. Slow, heavy, further apart. The warmth inside my chest grew. I realized with horror that it wasn't real warmth. It was death. My body was shutting down. The cold had become so severe that my mind was beginning to lie to me. The voices were helping it. Sleep, I wanted to. God, I wanted to. The snow around me had become soft, inviting. I wanted to lie down. I wanted to close my eyes. I wanted the pain to stop. But people were coming closer. A man called out, "Hey, are you okay?" A woman behind him said something about calling an ambulance. I tried to lift my hands. They barely moved. "Stay away," I tried to say. My lips were numb. The words came out wrong. The man took another step toward me. No, he stopped. I pointed toward the snow. My arm shook violently. "Don't," the voices surged. "Sleep, don't touch it." I don't know if he heard me. He looked down at the white ground. More people gathered. Some stood several yards away. Others were getting closer. Too close. I wanted to warn them. I wanted to explain everything. But the voices were changing. They weren't warning me anymore. They were mourning me. I could hear sadness in them, recognition. They knew what came next because they had experienced it too. The other hosts, the people before me, they had all reached this moment. They had all felt the strange warmth. They had all wanted to sleep. And every one of them had left something behind. The crystals. The infection. The next host. My knees gave out. I collapsed into the snow. It felt warm. That was the most terrifying part. It felt like a blanket. The bright sun hung above me. California had never looked more beautiful. Palm trees in the distance. Blue sky. The ocean moving calmly. People staring. Phones held up. Someone running toward me. I wanted to tell them to run the other way. Instead, my eyes started closing. The voices whispered more gently now. Frozen, ocean, heat, death. Then, beneath all of them, one final thought became clear. Not words exactly. Knowledge. The crystals around me were already moving. I could feel them sliding through the snow, burrowing deeper into the sand. Hundreds of them, waiting where bare feet would eventually step, waiting beneath beach towels, waiting near the water, waiting for children building sandcastles, waiting for runners, waiting for anyone. I tried to move again. My body refused. Someone stepped into the edge of the snow. I heard the crunch. My eyes opened. A young man was kneeling beside me. He reached toward my shoulder. No. He touched me. His expression changed immediately. I saw pain cross his face. He pulled his hand away. There was blood on one finger. A tiny piece of ice was stuck beneath his skin. "No," I whispered again. He stared at it. Confused, the crystal disappeared. His wound closed, and beneath his finger, thin blue lines began to spread. The voices inside my head went silent. For one perfect second, there was nothing. Then I heard a new voice. His, not through the air, inside my mind. What the hell? I wanted to cry. I wanted to apologize, but I couldn't move anymore. The last thing I felt before my eyes closed was the warmth inside my chest becoming complete. The last thing I heard was the ocean, and the last thing the voices told me was the truth I had spent all morning trying to deny. I had never been the end of this. I was only the beginning. Story 5. I don't remember how I got here. That is the first thing I know for certain. There is no memory of arriving, no journey, no door opening, no moment when one place changed into another. 1 second, there is nothing I can clearly remember, and then I am standing here among hundreds of strangers. Everything feels hazy, soft, unreal, like one of those dreams where you know something important is happening, but you cannot remember how it started. People dressed in white clothes move in every direction around me. Some walk quickly, carrying books or papers. Others stand beside groups of confused people and speak to them in calm voices. Nobody seems frightened except the people who have just arrived. I suppose that includes me. The strange thing is that I cannot feel much of anything physically. I can see my feet moving when I walk, but I cannot feel the ground beneath them. Actually, I'm not sure there is a ground. Everything below us is pale and soft, almost hidden beneath a thin white mist. Walking across it feels like walking on a cloud, except I cannot feel the pressure of my own steps. I look down at myself. I still have hands, arms, clothes, a body. At least I seem to. But something is missing. Weight, that is the best way I can describe it. I feel weightless. Not floating exactly, but as if gravity has forgotten about me. Around me, people speak in frightened voices. Where am I? What happened? Where's my husband? I need to go home. Is this a hospital? Nobody gives them the kind of answers they want. Ahead of us stands a man holding a large book. Every few seconds, he calls out a name. James Morris. A man steps forward. Elaine Carter. An elderly woman raises her hand and moves through the crowd. Mohammed Hassan. Another person walks toward him. Name after name, people step forward when they hear theirs and disappear farther into the white space beyond him. I have no idea what is happening. I try to remember where I was before this. Home? Yes, I was home. I think. My bedroom appears in my mind for a moment. Dark curtains. The lamp beside the bed. My wife sleeping beside me. My little girl in the room down the hallway. I remember being in bed. That feels real. Much more real than this place. Maybe I'm still there. Maybe this is a dream. The thought comforts me. Of course, that must be it. I am asleep. For some reason, my dream is unusually clear, but dreams can feel real while you are inside them. I need to wake up. I push through the people until I reach the man calling names. I want to get out of here. He barely looks at me. Whatever your issue is, go and tell him. He points across the strange open space. I follow his finger. Another man is sitting behind a large desk. The desk looks strangely ordinary compared with everything around it. Dark wood. A chair. Pens. Stacks of thick books piled on top of one another. There must be hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. People approach the desk one at a time. They ask questions. The seated man answers them. Some leave looking relieved. Some leave crying. Others look completely empty. I walk toward him. As I get closer, I notice that he does not seem tired despite the endless line of people. His clothes are white like everyone else's. His face looks neither young nor old. There is something calm about him that immediately irritates me. How can anyone be calm in a place like this? When it is my turn, he looks up. Yes? I need to get out of here. He studies me for only a second. Then, as casually as if I have asked where the restroom is, he says, "Okay," I blink. "That's it?" He turns his head toward another man standing nearby. "Take him to the stairs." The other man nods. "All right. Come with me." For a moment, I almost follow him. Then I stop. Wait. The man beside me looks back. I turn to the man behind the desk. "Where do these stairs lead?" He looks confused by the question. "To your destination." He says it as if the answer should be obvious. What destination? He pauses. Then he places his pen carefully on the desk. He leans back in his chair and folds his hands across his stomach. For the first time, he gives me his full attention. "What is your name?" I hesitate. "Why does he need my name?" "Roger." He looks at one of the books on his desk. He does not even need to search very long. "Roger?" "Yes." His eyes return to mine. "Roger, you have passed away." For a moment, I do not understand the sentence. The words are simple. Passed away. Died. Dead. But my mind refuses to connect them to me. I laugh. "What rubbish." He says nothing. I remember being tucked into my bed. I understand. So this is a dream. No, yes it is. It only feels like a dream to you. I stare at him. This is reality. The calmness in his voice makes me angry. No, it can't be. He waits. "I don't remember dying. That is normal." How could that be normal? Again, he says nothing. I step closer to the desk. "How did I die?" His expression does not change. That is the one piece of knowledge God has not given to human beings here. What does that mean? You do not need to know. I absolutely need to know. He glances toward the growing line behind me. I ignore them. Was I sick? No answer. Was there an accident? Nothing. Did something happen while I was sleeping? He remains silent. I point at myself. Look at me. I'm standing here. I'm talking to you. Yes, that means I'm alive. No, my anger gives way to panic. This can't be happening. It already has. No, Roger, I'm dreaming. You are not. I'm just unable to wake up. You have passed away. You need to accept it. No, my voice becomes louder. Several people turn toward us. I need to go back. You cannot. My wife is there. He looks at me quietly. My daughter is there. Still nothing. She's little. My voice breaks slightly. She needs me. I'm sorry. No, you don't understand. I do. You don't. I lean both hands against the desk, although I barely feel the wood beneath my palms. I have a family. So did many people here. I can't just leave them. You already have. The words hit me harder than anything else he has said. I step back. No. He lowers his eyes for a moment. I shake my head. No, I didn't. My mind desperately searches for memories. My wife. I see her smiling. My daughter sitting at the kitchen table. A drawing taped to the refrigerator, tiny shoes near the front door. A pink blanket. A stuffed rabbit. I remember promising my daughter something. What was it? That we would go somewhere? That we would play together tomorrow? Tomorrow, the thought makes my chest ache. There has to be some mistake. There isn't. Send me back. I cannot. Then find someone who can. No one can. I suddenly get an idea. It sounds ridiculous, but everything around me is ridiculous. Hit me. The man looks at me. What? Hit me. We cannot do that. Beat me. Several people nearby stare. Roger, beat me as hard as you can. All of you. I don't care. That will not help. Yes, it will. I point at the people around us. Dreams end when something shocks you. Pain can wake you up. This is not a dream. Then prove it. We already have. No, you haven't. I hold my arms out. Hit me. Nobody moves. Come on. The man behind the desk looks tired now. Not physically tired. Sad. Roger, please move forward. No, there are others waiting. I don't care. You cannot stay here. then send me home. You know I cannot do that. Then I'm staying, and I do. I sit down right there. At least I think I sit down. I still cannot properly feel the surface below me. I refuse to move. People go around me. Names continue to be called. More frightened faces arrive. More people ask questions. Some accept the answers quickly. That makes me angry. How can they? How can someone be told that everything they knew is gone and simply walk away? Maybe they do not have children. Maybe they were ready. I was not. I am not. Time becomes strange. I do not know whether minutes pass or hours. There seems to be no sun here, no clock, nothing changes. Eventually, several people dressed in white gather around me. They speak gently. They tell me I must continue. I tell them I will not. They explain again. I refuse again. More come. At some point, the crowd becomes so large that I realize I am stopping everyone else from moving properly. Some of the newly arrived people stare at me with frightened expressions. Perhaps seeing someone resisting makes their own fear worse. One elderly man kneels beside me. You should go. I look at him. How can you say that? He smiles sadly. Because there is nowhere else for us to go. That sentence stays with me. Eventually, after endless arguing, begging, and refusing, I stand. Not because I accept what they have told me. I don't. I stand because I realize nobody is going to give me another answer. Before I leave, I turn back toward the man at the desk. One question. He looks up. When can I see them again? He already knows who I mean. My wife, my daughter. His expression softens. When their time comes, they will be here. When? That is not for you to know. Years? He does not answer. Decades? Nothing. My daughter is young. The thought terrifies me. If all of this is real, will I have to wait 50 years? 70? Will she become an old woman while I remain like this? Will I recognize her? Will she recognize me? The man seems to understand what I'm thinking. Go inside, he tells me. You will become intoxicated with bliss. You will not have a care for anyone. That is what happens to everyone. I stare at him. What did you say? You will be at peace. That isn't what you said. He waits. You said I won't care about anyone. The pain will leave you. And my family? You will no longer suffer because of separation. I feel something colder than fear. So I'll forget them? That is not exactly what I said. But I won't care. He does not answer. That silence tells me enough. I turn away. I cannot explain why his promise of happiness frightens me more than anything else I've heard. You will not have a care for anyone. The words follow me. They repeat inside my mind. You will not have a care for anyone. I think of my daughter, her laugh, her tiny hands, the way she calls for me when she wakes from a bad dream. I think of my wife asleep beside me. Years together, arguments, trips, ordinary mornings, quiet evenings. Everything we built, and someone is telling me that if I walk forward, all of that will stop mattering. Maybe I would not literally forget. Maybe their faces would remain somewhere inside me. But what good is remembering someone if the love disappears? I would rather hurt. The pain is proof that they matter. If heaven means becoming so happy that I stop caring about my wife and child, then something about heaven feels wrong. The man assigned to guide me leads me away from the desk. As we walk, I repeat the same thought to myself. It's a dream, Roger, that is all. A dream. Maybe I am still lying in my bed. Maybe my wife is beside me. Maybe my daughter will run into our room in the morning. I only have to wake up. How does a person wake from a dream? Sometimes a loud noise does it. Sometimes fear. Sometimes falling. Sometimes pain. Sometimes hearing a familiar voice. If I can cause enough shock, maybe my eyes will open. I desperately try to remember whether I have dreamed this before. There is something familiar about the place. Or maybe I am only convincing myself there is. Dreams do that. You can experience something completely new while feeling certain it has happened before. The guide finally stops beside what looks like an escalator, except it is far longer than any escalator I have ever seen. The moving stairs rise upward into bright white mist. "This is where I leave you," he says. I look at him. "You're not coming?" "No, what's at the top?" "2 doors." I wait. He continues, "From one door you will feel a cold breeze." I nod. "From the other you will feel warmth." "Which one do I take?" "The cold one." I stare at him. "The cold one?" "Yes, that seems backwards." He gives me a faint smile. Many things seem different from what people expect. "What happens if I take the warm one?" His smile disappears. "You should not." "That doesn't answer my question. You were instructed to take the cold door. What is behind the warm one?" He looks at me for several seconds. Then he says, "Do not enter it." "Why?" No answer. "Is that hell?" He turns away. Wait, he keeps walking. "What happens if I go through the wrong door?" He does not look back. "Just take the cold one, Roger." Then he disappears into the crowd. I stand at the bottom of the moving staircase. Cold door. Warm door. Choose cold. Simple, I step onto the escalator. It carries me upward. The higher I go, the quieter everything becomes. The voices below disappear first. Then the sound of movement. Soon there is nothing. I am completely alone. White mist surrounds the staircase. For a moment I can see nothing above or below. It feels as though I am traveling through an empty sky. My thoughts return to home. My wife. My daughter. The memory of my little girl becomes painfully clear. She is sitting on the floor with crayons scattered around her. She looks up at me and asks whether I like her drawing. I tell her I love it. I can almost hear her voice. "Daddy." The word nearly destroys me. "No." I say it aloud. The empty space gives no answer. I'm waking up. I have to. I cannot disappear from her life. I cannot let my family become something I once cared about. What if that man was right? What if stepping through the correct door fills me with so much joy that I no longer care about returning? Is that supposed to comfort me? It sounds like losing myself. Death already took my body. I will not willingly give it my love too. The escalator finally reaches the top. The mist clears. 2 doors stand before me. Nothing else. No walls. No signs. Just 2 doors in an endless white space. The one on the left is simple and pale. As soon as I step toward it, a cold breeze touches my face. It is not painfully cold. Actually, it feels clean, quiet, like winter air just before snow. There is something peaceful about it. The other door stands several feet away. Warm air comes from beneath it. The warmth feels familiar, comforting, like sunlight through my bedroom window on a quiet morning, like lying under blankets beside my wife, like home. I stand between them. My instructions were clear. Cold. Take the cold door. But every instinct inside me wants the warm one. I close my eyes. Warm air touches the right side of my face. Cold air touches the left. This is a dream. I repeat it again. This is just a dream. Maybe I have been here before. Maybe this entire thing has happened several times and I simply forget every time I wake. Maybe the cold door is exactly what keeps the dream going. Maybe I followed their instructions before. Maybe I walked into that cold place, became happy, forgot everything, and eventually ended up back here. I have no proof. But I have no proof of anything. The only thing I know is that I cannot leave my daughter. I cannot leave my wife. They are real. They have to be real. My daughter's face appears again. She has my eyes. My wife always says that. I remember carrying her when she was a baby. I remember being terrified that I would drop her. I remember the first time she fell asleep on my chest. I remember staring down at her and silently promising that I would always be there. What is that promise worth if I calmly walk into eternity without even trying to return? Maybe I died. Maybe I didn't. But if there is even the smallest possibility that I am dreaming, I have to fight. I need something powerful enough to wake me. Fear, pain, shock, the cold door feels peaceful. The warm door feels dangerous only because I was told it was. That is when the thought comes to me. If the warm door leads somewhere terrible, then perhaps terrible is exactly what I need. A nightmare wakes you faster than a pleasant dream. Pain wakes you. Fear wakes you. Maybe I need to shock myself back into my body. I walk toward the warm door, then stop. My hand hovers near the handle. Something deep inside me screams not to touch it. For the first time since arriving, I feel something close to physical sensation. Heat. The metal handle seems hot even before my fingers reach it. I pull my hand back. I look toward the cold door. A silent breeze continues flowing through the gap. There is peace there. I know it. Somehow I know. If I go through that door, the fear will end. The pain will disappear. The terrible longing to hold my daughter again will fade. I will be happy. That is exactly why I cannot do it. I won't forget them. My voice shakes. I won't stop caring. I turn toward the warm door again. The air feels like my bedroom in summer. For one horrible moment, I imagine my wife on the other side. Maybe she is calling me. Maybe this is a test. Maybe everyone here expects the dead to obey without questioning anything. Maybe the only way back is to disobey. I grip the handle. This time I feel it. Pain explodes through my palm. I almost laugh. Pain. Real pain. It is the first physical sensation I have felt since arriving. This is it. If I can feel pain, I can wake. I pull the door open. Heat slams into me. Not gentle warmth anymore. Fire. The air itself feels alive. Somewhere far below I hear screaming. Thousands of voices. Maybe millions. The sound is so enormous that my mind cannot understand it. I should stop. I should close the door. Instead, I smile. A nightmare. Perfect. This has to wake me. Behind me, someone shouts, "Roger." I turn. Far down the white path, the guide is running toward me. For the first time, his calm expression is gone. His face is filled with terror. Close it. I grip the door tighter. Roger, do not go inside. His fear encourages me. This has to be the answer. He is trying to stop me because I have figured it out. I think of my daughter. Wait for me. I'm coming home. The guide screams again. You don't understand. Maybe I don't, but neither did they. They expected me to accept death without fighting. They expected me to let happiness erase everything I loved. I will not. I step across the doorway. Instantly, the white world disappears. The door slams shut behind me. Darkness surrounds me. Then pain arrives. Real pain. Not symbolic, not distant. Real, it tears through every part of me. I scream. For one beautiful second, I am certain I have succeeded. Any moment now, I will wake in bed. My wife will shake me. Roger, wake up. My daughter will be safe. Morning light will come through the window. I keep waiting. The pain grows stronger. I wait. Fire appears in the darkness below me. I wait. Something moves inside the flames. I wait. Screams fill the air around me. I wait for my alarm. For my wife's voice. For anything familiar. Nothing comes. Wake up, I whisper. The flames rise. Wake up. Something laughs in the darkness. No. I finally understand. The pain does not wake me because I am not asleep. The man at the desk had told me the truth. I really had died. The cold door had not been a trap. The peace beyond it had not been meant to steal my family from me. It had been mercy, and the warmth I mistook for home had never been sunlight through my bedroom window. It was fire. I had been given directions. I had been warned. I had been told exactly which door to choose. But I could not accept a world where my family had to continue without me. I could not accept death. So when heaven opened one door and told me to enter, I convinced myself that salvation was the lie. I thought pain would wake me. I thought fear would take me home. I thought hell was only another nightmare. But nightmares end. This does not. As the flames reach me, one final thought enters my mind. I wonder how I died. Maybe peacefully in bed. Maybe beside the woman I loved. Maybe without pain. Maybe my wife woke in the morning and found me there. Maybe my daughter asked why Daddy would not wake up. I will never know. That knowledge was never given to me. But there is something else I know now. I remember the two doors. One breathed a silent, cold breeze. The other offered gentle warmth. I was told exactly where I needed to go. And because I was desperate to wake from a dream that was never a dream at all, I made the only choice that could truly separate me from my family. I marched straight into the gates of hell.